Welcome to the Significance of Wealth podcast, where we explore the evolving landscape of wealth management, private investments, and collecting as both a passion and investment strategy. I'm Marty Salt. Today, host Tom Ruggie is joined by Kyle Bell. Kyle is the founder of Bell Sports Marketing, a Scottsdale-based sports and entertainment marketing firm with more than 25 years of industry experience. Over the course of his career, he has brokered appearance and endorsement partnerships with some of the most recognized names in sports and entertainment, including Magic Johnson, Travis Kelce, Shaquille O'Neal, Emmitt Smith, and Chevy Chase. Bell Sports Marketing serves as the parent company to a family of businesses, including Press Pass Collectibles, focused on authenticated autograph and memorabilia sales. CBU Auctions, which has helped raise nearly $24 million for charitable organizations through memorabilia-driven fundraising events. And Framework Picture Framing Studio, providing custom framing solutions for private collectors and commercial clients. In this conversation, Tom and Kyle explore the business of access and trust, the infrastructure required to scale within a specialized market, and the evolution of sports memorabilia from hobby to recognized alternative asset category. They also discuss the distinction between established blue-chip legacy pieces and more speculative current player opportunities. Now, here's your host, Tom Ruggie.
Welcome to another edition of Significance of Wealth. I have with me today Kyle Bell. I've gotten to know Kyle pretty well over the last year or so. We're both members of Tiger 21, and Kyle lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. But as we'll talk about, he's living a very cool life, in my opinion, kind of what my secondary passion is, which is the sports memorabilia market. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, how he turned growing up as a kid and selling baseball cards and selling other things to raise money, how he turned that passion into a very big business, very successful business. And so, Kyle, great to have you on.
Hey, Tom, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on and looking forward to doing this.
So we'll get right into this. Again, Kyle's somebody I've really enjoyed speaking with. We've got some similarities in background. I mentioned selling candy and selling baseball cards and, as a kid doing whatever you could do to make money. I've got the exact same story. And frankly, I used to wash cars and mow lawns and do whatever, and I'd go spend it on baseball cards. And here I've got Kyle, who grew up loving sports as a kid. And now, you've taken that passion that a lot of us had growing up and you've turned it into a big business. So give us a little background on kind of what got you from the very beginning to where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, growing up, I always had a entrepreneurial spirit. And, that's what I've always done. I was just like you were selling candy when you were in school. Like I did the same thing. And I would go to Costco, have my mom take me to Costco on the weekends, and I'd go buy bulk candy, and I would sell it at school. And so same thing. And then when I was young, when I was 6 years old, some kids would have a lemonade stand. I had a pet rock stand that I would sell in the neighborhood. So, it was always something, always a hustle of some sort. So when I was in school, like I said, I was selling candy, and I started collecting baseball cards. So I started selling grab bags out of my backpack. I would, on the weekends, I would wrap that. That's awesome. I wrap cards up, and I would have, when, Shaquille O'Neal had a rookie, his rookie year, and I would say, hey guys, you can get the Shaquille O'Neal rookie card in here, and, buy a couple of them. And I would sell out every time I did that. So yeah, I was same path, man. Just, always trying to hustle and trying to figure out a way to make a buck. And, kind of led me into, as I said, I was a card collector. And eventually I went to my mom and I said, the card market's just really oversaturated. I was like 12 years old or something like that. I'm like, there's just so much. It's just cheap junk. I want to get into autographs. I think that's where things are going to go. I think I have a better way to make some money doing that. So, going to card shows on the weekend and seeing some people selling autographs. And I would actually started going into the hotels where the basketball teams and football teams were coming in, to play the Phoenix Suns and the Cardinals and whatnot. And I would get autographs from the players, and I would sell, keep a couple for myself, sell a couple, and
kind of. What about spring training in baseball? Because like me in Florida, you've got spring training in Arizona.
Spring training, the whole deal, and eventually I would go out for the musicians when they came into town. And so instead of getting an after school job when I was a kid, which a lot of kids do at 14, 15 years old, whatever it may be. I never did that. I never went to, get that, after school, deal. I would just kind of hustle and go down to the hotels and cut out of school early because I wasn't the most studious person in the world. But yeah, I would do that, and I would sell autographs, and I was making a lot more money than everyone else my age, which was fun. So I kept that passion going. I rode that through college. Went to Arizona State. Had a great time at ASU. Glad I had that experience there. It was awesome. But I was going to the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, golf tournaments, things like that around the country. I would actually go to my professors and I would tell them what I do. I said, hey, this is how I'm paying. I paid my way through college. I said, here's what I'm doing. This is how I'm putting myself through college. So they would allow me to, miss a test, make it up, or whatever it was. And they thought it was pretty cool what I was doing. I kind of showed them, my world.
Your business plan.
Yeah, essentially like a kid's business plan. Exactly. So, I'm 18, 19, 20 years old, graduated college, and, had the opportunity to go get an entry-level job somewhere. But I looked at it and I said, I'm making more money now than getting an entry-level job somewhere. So I just kept doing it. And organically I grew from, the memorabilia side, which I, made relationships with some athletes and celebrities and whatnot. I would pay them for their, to do deals with me, and just kind of rode that and kept it going. And now looking back 20 some odd years later, and I'm still here. So, we have a great company, great people. So the company's Bell Sports Marketing. That's the parent company essentially. And then under that, we have Press Mass Collectibles, which is the memorabilia side of the business. We have a charity auction fundraising side, which I started in late 2000s. We basically raise money for charities, foundations around the country. We raised over close to $24 million for charities using our platform. And it's, that actually started because people would always ask me for donations for events and whatnot. And I eventually got to the point where the light bulb went off, and I thought, I think there's a business here. I think I could actually do a great thing, raise money, and also, make it a profit center essentially. So we have a great team of people. We have people who've been with us for, 10 plus year employees, a great exec team. We have about 50 some odd employees and contractors around the country that help us with our events and our activations. So we have a custom framing studio. So a lot of the events that we do, we have framed items like you see behind me. So we control our own destiny, everything we do in-house. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it really is. There's it's work. It definitely is work, but I get to hang out with some cool people and have some pretty fun experiences.
Yeah, but also being able to do something you're passionate about, and not only do well yourself financially, but also be able to give back significantly. I mean, $23 million, that's significant. It's a great combination, even though I know you work your ass off, but you're loving what you're doing.
Yeah. There's, as I said, just like anything, it is a lot of fun. Definitely, it's definitely a niche business.
Well, as I've already mentioned, we have a lot in common, but you can also see the age difference between us, because there was no Costco when I was buying candy. I had to ride my bike and stop at the local 7-Eleven and pick up a bunch of Jolly Ranchers for 5 cents each, and I'd sell them for a quarter each. It's a little bit different time.
It's good. It's a good ROI. There you go.
It is. But one thing that you mentioned that, because I used to go and chase the athletes as well for autographs, again, growing up in Florida, spring training.
Sure.
So was there anybody that when you were growing up that was a difficult autograph to get, but you were able to succeed? Because for me, that person was Greg Maddux. Greg was not known for being a very generous or good signer, and yet for whatever reason, virtually every time I could literally I could recognize his walk from 100 yards away, and the minute I saw him, every single time I ever asked him for an autograph, he came over and signed for me.
It's awesome. Yeah, there's definitely guys that are definitely interesting in the way they act and react to fans, and there is a component of these days of all these guys believe that, all these adults that are asking for autographs are just going to sell them. Mm-hmm. So some guys will only sign for kids. I mean, notoriously, like Patrick Ewing was an extremely difficult signature to get. He was just not the most pleasant,
Not the nicest guy in the world. Yeah.
yeah, he really wasn't. So, that's one. I don't think I ever actually got him until I started paying him. It's funny. Some of these guys, it's a, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, mentality, where in public they're not the nicest people, but when you have them behind closed doors and they're getting paid, then the mood changes, and it's a business opportunity, and they like it. But Willie Mays was always a tough one in spring training here. He's a huge name, obviously, and one of the greatest baseball players to ever live, and he was always a really tough one to get. But he was one of my first autographs I ever got, actually, at Giant spring training. So he was one that he was sitting at a table, and he wasn't the most pleasant guy, but he was signed some autographs, and so that was definitely one that was pretty cool. And I don't know honestly, I was probably 12, 13 years old, and so I don't know what happened to that baseball, but somebody probably has it now. I don't think I really don't know what happened to it.
So, you kind of got up into the early 20s, and you're in college, and you were able to get your professors to let you fly to Hawaii for the Pro Bowl and stuff. But when was that first moment that you're like, wow, I'm developing a real business here? Like what clicked? What took place?
Yeah, I say this jokingly, but a little bit seriously. I'm still waiting for it. It's one of those situations where this is all I've ever known. This is all I've ever done. So, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about, the entire 21 is, I'm surrounded by some really bright, amazing, successful people that have done things so differently than I have, that, just kind of real eye opener. But, I think when I bought my first building, that was kind of a wow moment. I bought my first building. It was a 20,000 square foot office, showroom, warehouse. And it was just kind of, I remember walking around one night after I bought the building, scared out of my mind because it just took on a huge debt, and, thinking, man, how's this going to work? And, that was just kind of the light bulb kind of went off and said, there's something here, there's something that's working, something that's working for me, and, the great people I have working with me. So it was a cool transition. And then since then, we have a couple of buildings now. We're in about 40,000 square feet of office, warehouse, showrooms, and frame studio, and, everything we had going on. Sometimes it's still kind of a cool moment to take a minute when everyone leaves, and, walk around at the end of the day, and, just think, okay, it's kind of working out. I didn't really, didn't have a crystal ball back in my early 20s, and had no idea where I was going or what was going to happen. And, if the bottom would fall out of this business, who knows? And I would have to go get a job somewhere, which I'm pretty much unhireable in my opinion, because I've never done anything else. So, that's always been kind of a thought in the back of my head.
Well, I don't see that happening. I mean, let's talk a little bit about, some of the relationships that you have. I mean, you've got relationships with some of the biggest names in sports, and even outside of sports. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you handle Chevy Chase, you handle Travis Kelce, Emmitt Smith, Magic Johnson, and a plethora of others. So how were you able to develop those relationships and then turn it into kind of a juggernaut of, I mean, I don't know how many relationships like that you have, but I have to guess it's probably 30, 40, 50 people that have some form of exclusivity to you.
Yeah. So we have exclusive deals with a lot of athletes, and it's just being in this business for a long time, and meeting the athletes, and some deals we do through the agencies, some we do directly with the athletes themselves. I have some that I love working with, and I love to see them every time I have the opportunity. And there's other guys that it's just a business relationship, and some guys are, always have a smile and they're always great, and some guys it's just business. They come in, they do a job, and it is what it is. But that's fine. That's how it is. Just with people in life, you have some people that you work with, and you're not going to grab a glass of wine or a cocktail with them after. And there's some guys that that happens. And like I said, I find myself in some super cool situations where I'm like, wow, how did I get here? This is pretty cool, and other times it's like, I can't wait to get out of here, and tomorrow's another day.
So you've grown this. You mentioned the press pass collectibles. You mentioned your auction company, your framing company, and again, you alluded to it when you were 6 years old or 8 years old, that there's always been kind of this entrepreneurial streak. But when you walk around your office and you look at what you've done and where you are, I mean, was there intentionality behind all that, or did things just kind of progress along and you opportunistically open another door to, to start a charitable endeavor, or to start your framing studio, or, so like, where's the entrepreneurial streak, and is that still there for you?
Yeah. So, we've spoken before about it. When I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, I was doing everything and anything. I sold cars, I'd buy used cars and sell them. I had a clothing company at one point. I had an HVAC company, but I was always doing memorabilia. And it got to the point where, you can't give 100% of attention to 5 different things. You can only give, 20% to each. So when I kind of, realized that the profit center, the thing that was doing best for me and I knew the best was this business, I took that opportunity and sat back and I said, I think I need to stop doing all of this stuff that's taking my bandwidth and my time, and just focus on, the higher hanging fruit, which I knew best. So, that was kind of the moment where I just, realized I need to put the time and the work in, and make this a priority. I'm still, every day I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, I'm self-diagnosed ADD, so that's probably why I have all these different divisions and all these different things that go on. And, we're always opening, or we're always starting new endeavors and new revenue streams, but within the business, essentially. So for instance, we're on our charity side of the company, we developed charitable software, and event management software that's we've been working on for a couple of years, and we just launched that. And it's something where we can, assist charities on the other side, and not just consigning them auction items to sell at their events, but actually help managing their events as well. So it's like a spider web of lots of different opportunities, and just figuring out which ones are going to be the best opportunities to make events return.
I think most of us that are entrepreneurs have that same, ADD syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I certainly do, and I wouldn't have diagnosed it at an early age, but as I've gotten more and more into business and entrepreneurial, it it definitely seems to be there, because there's always, new opportunities present themselves, and you want to have an open mind to those sorts of things. So along that line, is there a moment in time where you were scaling your business that something happened that scared you a little bit? I mean, for me, it was the '08 time frame, and
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that. But what's been your scariest moment in business, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, that's great to go into, actually. So, during the financial crash of '08, not '09, I wasn't, obviously scaled to where I am now. So I really it wasn't that much of an impact. It's interesting because in this business, I feel that people, it is a luxury, but I feel that people love this so much, and love the memorabilia, and love the, cards and whatnot, that people were still spending money on this stuff at that time, which is crazy to hear, but it's true. But the biggest scare probably was COVID, the uncertainty of 2020. I remember, coming in the office, and we had to lay off a few people, and the world closed down. And that was probably the scariest moment. But then what happened is this business took off like a rocket ship. And it
Say
was,
COVID had to catapult your business.
yeah, it really did.
In
So
hindsight, it was probably the best thing for your business.
it was, I mean, it was, for the business, it was great. For the world, it was not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a situation where we ended up, and it was actually funny. I'm involved in a group. A couple of us, are partners together in some of the exclusive deals, and we didn't know what we were going to do. Right? We couldn't go do our show. We have the biggest sports card memorabilia show on the East Coast. That was canceled, obviously. So what we ended up doing was we went to Dallas, Texas for 10 days. We rented a ballroom in a hotel, a massive ballroom, and we had 40, 50, 60 players come in over a 10-day span and sign thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pieces. And we were the only people doing this at that time. And the demand was so high that it was amazing. We were able to, everything we got, we were able to sell. That really, was was a great thing for the business at that time. It was wild. We actually ended up doing that twice in 2020, and I think beginning of 21. But nobody was doing anything like that. So we were able to supply all our wholesalers and retail and eBay website, Amazon, all the sales channels were booming. So it was quite a wild situation.
Yeah, it was. So along those lines, I mean, like I said, I think COVID was for the sports memorabilia market, period. I think it was the absolute best thing that's ever happened to the market. And I write a lot of content about this now because I think that's the time frame that the transition went from it being really solely a hobby to, from a collector standpoint, it becoming more of an investment, or at least a hobby with investment opportunities such as art. I think it's transitioned into
I
art
agree.
and coins and things like that. So just out of curiosity, when you're talking to somebody about sports memorabilia, I mean, do you talk about it as a passion? Do you talk about it as an investment, or is it kind of somewhere in the middle?
Yeah. So it can be both, and there's the run of the mill, the current players. Those, in my opinion, are not investments. You have a prospect. There was the other day, Cooper Flagg, who was the first pick in the NBA draft this year. His debut jersey sold for over $1 million. Now, somebody spent $1 million on that jersey. He hasn't played a full season in the NBA, and that's somebody's looking at that as an investment, obviously. But
For sure.
it's a huge
Yeah,
name.
they're looking for it to be the next $10 million jersey.
Right. So, you have those situations, and you have, I mean, years ago, Babe Ruth's called shot, was it the jersey, or the jersey sold for 20 something $million?
24 million.
Yeah, $24 million. I mean, that's an investment, and it's an unbelievable piece, and it's not going to go down in value. So when you're looking at those kind of pieces that are, the prospect pieces, which is I'd say the Cooper Flag jersey, but the investment piece is the Babe Ruth and plenty of others like that. So now that you're seeing, funds come in, private equity, big hitters are coming in, and they're actually putting money into this as they would art, as they would a, Monet, or, an art piece, or whatever it may be, or collectible coins. That's what this business is moving to. But again, you have the run of the mill, players like a Tyreek Hill, or whoever it may be. You have players like that. Like, I wouldn't consider them an investment. I consider that more like, the passion that somebody's a big fan of that player. So it's really interesting to see what's happened since 2020. Prices have skyrocketed. If you compare, I actually presented to my Tiger group a couple months ago, and I put together a deck on S&P versus memorabilia, and I put X amount of certain pieces in a chart, and I said, this is what I purchased them for, this is what I've sold them for over time, and it's outperformed the market essentially by quite a large number. And obviously you have to buy right. It's like buying a stock, or it's like money manager essentially.
So do you have any members that came to you afterwards and said, all right, Kyle, I want to invest, what do I do?
I had a couple that have talked to me about it, and
I bet.
I told them I'm happy to guide them the best I can, but I would always give some free advice. I definitely would assist them if they wanted to get into that, but yeah, some guys were very interested in it, and it's fun. It's honestly, it's a lot more fun than investing in some other things that are out there that aren't as fun. I mean, you can invest in real estate, and real estate's awesome, and it's a great investment, but at the same time, you can't, it doesn't have that sentimental value as a Will Chamberlain game used jersey, or a Babe Ruth, or all these Michael Jordan, or any of these items that are just going up and up in value.
But tell me, in your mind, the difference from an investment standpoint, and I'm going to use the two examples you used of a Cooper Flag jersey and a Babe Ruth jersey. How do you distinguish the two of those separately as a quote unquote investment?
Well, as I said, I think a Cooper Flag, or a current player, is more of it's a prospect. You're prospecting essentially. Like Nikola Jokic on the Nuggets. Could go down as one of the best players to ever play the game, but he's still playing. I mean, I like to consider the investment pieces are, guys that have cemented their legacy in, in the game. And if I'm collecting or if I'm, acquiring for myself, I'm looking more for the high end pieces of those guys versus the current players. But again, it's more of a gamble if it's current player, but you're going to potentially get a better deal, versus what.
Well, the Jokic's a current player as well, but to your point, he could retire today and he's already cemented his legacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I always talk about it in terms of blue chip investing, which, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, LeBron James, there's certain people that just aren't going to go down in value regardless, versus a penny stock. So like I'd say Cooper Flagg is a penny stock. Now I personally think, if he doesn't get injured and whatnot, Cooper Flagg is going to be amazing, and somebody may have made a great investment. But the difference is there's certainly more risk on the downside for purchasing a Cooper Flagg jersey versus purchasing a Michael Jordan jersey.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I would completely agree with that. Completely agree.
Do you still do anything in the cards space?
Not a lot. I'm not as well versed as you are, and some other people that I talk to on a daily basis. I've never really understood that space as well as others. It's amazing to see what's happened when you have cards out there that are trading for millions of dollars. Literally, there's three PSA 10 Mickey Mantle rookie cards in existence, right? A 52 Topps card, and now they're saying the Pokemon card the other day was about $60 million. I know nothing about Pokemon, but that's absolutely crazy. So if a Pokemon card sells for $16 million, how much is that Mickey Mantle card, which is one of the most historic, notable card in the business, that Honus buying or whatever. I mean, is that a $30 million card? Is that $50 million card? It's priceless essentially, because the guys, the people who own them, they won't sell them. They have no interest in selling them. So
yeah, I don't know anything about Pokemon either.
Me either.
I've written an article about the previous card before that sold for so much money, which is the Kobe Jordan logo card signed by both. I think that sold for about 13 million.
Well, it was 12, 15, somewhere on there. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I term that as artificial scarcity. And I actually wrote an article called artificial scarcity. You have companies that are creating one of one cards, but in theory they could create a different one of one the next year and the next year and the next year. And what's mind-boggling to me, and again, won't even talk about the Pokemon because that's completely mind-boggling to me. But what's mind-boggling to me is that jersey logo card sold for more than either their two most expensive jerseys together sold for. I mean, I think Jordan's jersey is one of the most expensive, current type jerseys, and his Last Dance jersey, I want to say sold for between $7 and $8 million.
Yes.
And granted, it might sell for a lot more now.
Yeah.
But sure. I look at that $13 million card. I'm like, as an investor who's also a passionate collector, I'd much rather have a game used jersey than a card with a logo on it.
Sure. I would agree. And that's one of the reasons why I can't really wrap my head around it. I think a lot of people are coming into business now and purchasing those cards. So the group who purchased that card, they're using it as marketing essentially. That's really what I see a lot of times. So is it an investment? Is it going to, are they can it continue to go up and up? Is it, the big question is this a bubble? Is it going to eventually burst? Eventually the stuff, what goes up must come down mentality, but it still hasn't come down. There's no real end in sight in general.
We haven't had the economy bubble burst either. And, I don't mind telling you, in 2008, I made some of the absolute best purchases from a value standpoint that I've ever made in my life, because things, people were scared and I had some dry powder and things were a lot cheaper. I mean, I bought a game used Babe Ruth bat for $16,000.
So that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, and I love hearing those stories, the upside of that time, because, there's a lot of people that were able to maximize it and capitalize off of it, which is fantastic. It's crazy to see what's happening, where this business is going. And from '08 to in 18 years to see it's a completely different, 100% different. I've been going to the National, which I saw you at in Chicago this year. That's the largest sports convention in the country every year. And it's being at that show in mid 2000s till now. They're nothing like it is, it's corporate. It's so, there's the activations in that show are unbelievable. The people that display their items. I mean, it's a massive, massive show. And years ago, it was just a baseball card show. Baseball cards, memorabilia, no big deal. You come in, it wasn't overly crowded. And now Wednesday afternoon, it's wall to wall people. Whereas, back in the day, it was no problem. Just walk up to a vendor and buy something, move on. And now you can't even get to the tables because it's so massive.
Yeah. Do you have a kind of a thought on what things look like 5 or 10 years down the road?
That's a great question. I believe it's going to continue to go up and up. I really do. I think there has to be some bit of leveling off eventually. But I don't really see when that's going to happen. You have the huge companies like a Fanatics, they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year in sales in this category. And that's just a fraction of what they do and overall because they're such a large company. But it's, when you have a big company like that, that's really backing the industry and backing the business, all the attention they're putting towards us. I wish I had a crystal ball, man. That's a great question. I wonder that every day. I can't figure it out quite yet. Well, what's your thought on it? What's your thought on that? I'd love to hear what you think.
I do think that there's going to be a bubble. I think it'll probably coincide with a stock market bubble. And I think it's going to be particularly harmful to the newer, things that are quote unquote being invested in. I could certainly be proven wrong. I mean, shit, I thought when Gretzky paid $400,000 for that Honus Wagner back whenever that was, I was like, oh my gosh, he's never going to get his money back. And now that card is probably worth $30-40 million now. Yeah. But I can't fathom that somebody's going to come in and pay more than $16 million for Pokemon. But again, what do I know? But I do think there'll be a bubble at some point. I think that the new stuff is going to be most susceptible on the downside. That doesn't mean it'll permanently stay down. But, obviously I'm in the wealth management business and I kind of look at assets in 3 different buckets. And the third bucket is 20 plus years. And my memorabilia collection is clearly in my bucket number 3. So I don't worry much about, and I'm buying blue chip stuff. I've got a lot of Babe Ruth autographs. I've got a lot of Michael Jordan stuff. I've got a lot of Muhammad Ali. I've got 4 Muhammad Ali fight worn trunks. And while I might lose 10, 20, 30, 40% on paper at any given moment on any of those, I'm not concerned about where they're going to be 10 plus years down the road.
So absolutely. And that's if you have the hindsight or the foresight to think of it that way. And then, if you're good with, buying and holding and, you can enjoy the piece, which is kind of fun about that stuff. It's a tangible item that you can look at and just, kind of gives you the chills when you pick up an item once in a while, like, wow, this is just really, really cool. But if you're okay, just, holding on to it, you really can't lose money if you buy smart and you buy the blue chip, items for sure. So you brought up that Honus Wagner, the Gretzky card. So it's funny that card's actually here in town in Arizona. Who owns the card now is actually Ken Kendrick, the owner of the Diamondbacks. And he has a phenomenal collection of cards.
Oh, he does.
Hundreds of millions of dollars in cards, but he actually owns that card now. So
yeah, cool little side note. So Tom Zappola, who does a podcast along with Rico Petrocelli, I've been a guest on his podcast a number of times, but he and his wife Ellen have written, well, I say written, they're more like coffee table books, but they did a book on Ken Kendrick's card collection. That's a pretty amazing book. Yeah. But I actually was interviewed by Tom yesterday because he and Ellen are doing their last book. And one of multiple features in the book is going to be my 52 signed top set. So excited about that.
Awesome. Very cool. I like it. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
So, our show's called Significance of Wealth. You've done a fantastic job of building significant wealth, and you've done so the way it should be done, doing something you're very passionate about. But you know, what what's on the horizon for you? Is there is there more gold shiny objects that's going to have you starting a different company, or do you have anything cooking that's going to expand or scale what you're currently doing? You did mention the software that you're building. What else?
Yeah, I've always kind of been on the mentality of just keep pushing forward, and whatever comes will come, one day at a time, man.
Very cool. Let me wind down with a couple of personal questions. So,
Sure.
what's the best sports memory that you've witnessed firsthand?
Oh boy, I am a sports fan, but I think over the years I'm a bit jaded from just being around a lot of these guys. So I don't go to a ton of games, to be honest. I think one of my favorite memories is 2001 Diamondbacks World Series. This is actually kind of goes back into business a little bit. So I have roommates at the time in college. My roommate calls me and he says, "Hey, if the Diamondbacks win the NLCS against the Braves, we're going to the World Series. I'm driving down to the stadium right now because they're going to start, selling World Series tickets." And I'm like, "Okay, well, when you get down there, let me know how it is." So he gets down there. He's like, "Hey, I'm like towards the front of the line. You should get down here." I go down there, I jump in line with him, and they start selling the tickets. They were selling 10 tickets per person per game, 1 and 2. We bought 40 tickets between us. So we said, "Okay, let's buy them. We're going to sell them." This is before StubHub and Ticketmaster.
Right.
This is like way back in the day, right? So,
That's
so
when
I
it
took a
stood
couple
on
days
stood
off
on the
school.
corner outside the game.
Yeah, exactly. So I took a couple days off school, which was not rare in that time, and we sold the 40 tickets, the game 1 and 2, and we made a bunch of money. We split it 50-50, and then we ended up going to some of the games, and it was it was electric. It was so much fun, so great, and I actually took that money and I used it for my business. I paid my credit card bill off at the time because I was had a little bit of debt being in college, and to pay that off, that felt great, and haven't been in debt ever since. So that's great too. We had an awesome time, and it was just like a super fun, amazing experience, and that was probably one of my most fun fun times that I had, and made a few bucks too. So that was pretty cool.
The consummate entrepreneur. Love it.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah. Some reason I can't get away from that. So it was a lot of fun.
You work with all these big time athletes. I'm not going to ask questions about who's tough to work with. It's obviously interesting, but not something you want to share publicly. So I'll ask the opposite of that. So are you willing to talk about anybody that has just like completely exceeded your expectations and just love being around them and would work with them and kind of in perpetuity,
Sure.
who's a go-to?
Yeah, a couple come to mind. Chevy Chase is one of my all-time favorites. I worked with him for the last 10 years, and just the guy. Every time I leave, I hang out with him for a couple of days. Every time I leave, my face hurts from laughing. He is just constantly on. The guy is absolutely hilarious, and behind closed doors, he's great. He's just he's like my dad. He's great. I've been with him in his house in New York, his house in LA, and just different places. Out to dinners with him, and he's just a lot of fun guy. Magic Johnson is one of my favorites that I work with. He's one of the most generous, kind people. He's absolutely amazing. He's so generous with people, with his time. When people come up to him, he's always just so engaging. And even if he's in a hurry and somebody comes up and they have a story to tell him, he listens and he's engaging. It's cool to see how he is with people. I booked him for an event in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and I met him in Atlanta because he was coming from somewhere else. He was coming from somewhere else in the country. And he calls me before. He's like, "Hey, Kyle, you going back to Phoenix after I'm going back to LA?" He's like, "Do you want to just jump on the plane and I'll drop you off in Phoenix?" I was like, "So you're going to let me jump on the plane and drop me off in Phoenix and then go home?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem." So we jumped on his plane, very comfortable ride, obviously. And, stops at Scottsdale Airport, drops me off, which is about 10 minutes from my house. And, it was great instead of having to take a commercial flight back. So that's just the kind of person he is. Just an awesome, great guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, last question along this line, and I know we've had a conversation about you selling a piece of, you're a collector yourself, and I recall having a conversation about you selling a piece that you've kind of kicked yourself for for selling. Is there anything in your collection now that you absolutely positively would not sell regardless of
Oh boy,
what somebody offers you?
yeah. Well, everything has the right price. Just depends if it's the right price. I'm kind of in the mentality of I do have a good amount of personal pieces that I consider personal pieces, but if the right opportunity arises, I would definitely you know entertain. I've had some people that have reached out to me for some pieces that I have that it's just not the right dollar amount to let it go because maybe I am a little emotionally attached to them, but for the most part, this is a business and uh there's so many amazing pieces out there that if you have something and you sell it, you can find something else that's going to essentially replace it or be able to you know find something that you're gonna like, hopefully just as much. But there's a few things in the back of the safe that I'm very partial to for sure.
All right, so we'll close out. Again, really appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation. It's amazing what you've done in business. I think it's also speaks a lot of volume about you, what you're doing on the charitable side. I think that's very meaningful, purposeful, and,
Thank you.
I think that's amazing. As far as contacting your companies, I mean, I often ask people if they want to leave contact information behind. I don't know that you necessarily want to leave any personal contact information behind, but perhaps there's information about, for example, your auction house or your framing studio or anything like that somebody listening to this that may want to utilize your services, want to give you the opportunity to put it out there.
Yeah, sure. Or just somebody that's a collector or somebody that wants to reach out and ask questions. I'm happy to oblige as well. Bellsportsmarketing.com is the website, and that has all of our companies on there and email. And I get the email actually, so I'll see that if somebody wants to send something in. If there's any questions or anything that I can assist with, I'd be happy to do so.
And I assume if somebody's listening to this that has some really cool collectible pieces they want to get rid of, that's something you're in the market for.
Yeah, we buy collections all the time, and that's something that we do. We travel around the country if the opportunity is right. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to chat with them and see if there's some opportunities.
Awesome. Any other closing thoughts? Are you good?
No, I really appreciate you having me on. I think it's a great conversation, and I always enjoy talking to you. Every time I talk to you, I feel like you're like, oh, I have this blue chip piece and this and this. So I love one of these days I'm going to come down and I'm gonna get want the tour. So it'd be
Yeah,
great to
well,
see some in person.
I'm going to do the same. I'm going to get to Phoenix or Scottsdale and
Yeah,
tour your place and have you show me around. Look forward to it.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to it.
We'll talk to you soon.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to Significance of Wealth on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You can also follow Tom Ruggie and Destiny Family Office on LinkedIn and destinyfamilyoffice.com for more insights on wealth management, private market opportunities, and collectibles. Until next time. The expressed views, thoughts, and opinions belong solely to the host and/or guests and are not investment recommendations or opinions issued by Destiny Wealth Partners or its affiliates. Investment advisory services are offered through Destiny Wealth Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Destiny Wealth Partners also conducts business under the name Destiny Family Office. Destiny Family Office podcasts are the sole property of Destiny Family Office, and information provided is for informational and educational purposes only. Learn more at www.destinyfamilyoffice.com/disclosures.